Now here's the ghetto part where I double check every place that I'm supposed to be live at because I'm ghetto like that. I'm paying for these services. I need to see for myself that it's live. Why does it say it starts in 3 minutes? I'm live already. You should be live. All right, let's see. Okay. I see that it says live in the window. Oh, it just gets edited out. Let's see. Facebook. Boom, boom, boom. All right. There it is. Let me share that to a regular page. Come on, YouTube, where you at? There you is. And I hear it. It sounds great. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Oh, on Twitch as well. Cool. I know, Graham, you're backstage and you're like, man, this is like some kind of amateur hour. Let's see. Cool. All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Hawaii Comedy with James Monte podcast. I still have to look and read that because I haven't memorized the title of the show that I named. So I still have to go back and be like, what was the name of the show? I got to click on that thing and read it. Oh, that's right. Thank you guys for joining. Today we have a special guest. I know, like, it's cliche. Everybody's like, we got a special guest. He's a good friend of mine. This one really is a friend of mine. Well, on my side, I don't know. We'll find out in the podcast. He might say something like, truth comes out, James. I was just using you to get to the islands. And now that I'm here, we're no longer friends. Who knows? We'll find out. But thank you guys for joining. Let's see. So he's been doing comedy, stand-up comedy for 20 plus years. Originally from Chicago, Wisconsin, so that Midwest area. He's been doing comedy for a long time, based out of LA. We became friends when he came down to Hawaii, and I hosted. I don't want to say hosted. Some people might think I put the thing together. I'm like the guy who introduces people on the stage, So I was able to meet him that way at Pipeline Cafe, who was doing comedy. I think it was every Wednesdays. And they brought down Graham Elwood. So I got to meet him, and this was, maybe like 10 years ago. And we've been friends ever since. He's come down, he's done shows all over Hawaii. We keep in touch. He actually inspired me to become a podcaster. Also invited me to a filming of it's called the name of the show was the FNX, the First Nations Comedy Experience, that I was part of. So you guys see me post on Instagram or Facebook that you can check me out on Amazon Prime. It's because of this guy, and I really appreciate it. The vision that he had was to highlight Native Americans that or the indigenous people. I'm not sure. He'll clean that up, and I apologize if I offended people. But Native Americans that do stand-up comedy. He also thought about indigenous people throughout the world, and he said, hey, I don't know any other Samoans that are doing stand-up comedy. So invited me to San Bernardino to film a set, and that's how I became the first Samoan to do a featured stand-up comedy set on American television. It was, all over PBS, and then it's streamed. It's now on Amazon Prime. It used to be free, but now you got to pay for it because I guess they found value in it. It's like, man, there's that Samoan guy in there. Let's charge people for this. But ladies and gentlemen, that's the longest introduction anyone will ever get, I think. So I cannot give him enough accolades, flowers, or whatever you call it, but I really care about the guy. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the podcast, Mr. Graham Elwood.
Hey, what's up, James?
Man, that was forever. That's
That
five
was
minute introduction.
that was like you're going through our whole history as friends. That was impressive, dude. I appreciate that. Yeah, man. Yeah, you were the show First Nations Comedy Experience was Native American and World Indigenous People was the sort of moniker of what we had, and that's why. Yeah, you were the first ever, and your intro. I love. I introduced you as first ever Samoan to do stand up on North American TV, and then you made this awesome joke about like, well, man, if I suck, everyone's going to be mad at me, and then they're going to be mad at Samoans, which was just awesome, and that was so much fun to do. That show was so great. I'm so glad now that it's on Amazon because FNX is I'm very grateful to them for the show, but it's a small little network, a little channel out in San Bernardino, and they were carried on I don't know, a dozen or so PBS channels around America. So when it got on Amazon, it's just given all these comics. We had 48, 49 comics, I think, on the show. So it was a really cool thing to be a part of, and I'm glad that I'm glad you were able to do it. It was super fun.
I had blast. I mean, I most of my performances is here in on Oahu. I've done some stuff on Maui and the Big Island, but being able to come up to the States and do stand up, that was like, like a fear and a challenge. And for me, it was like, I get to, it's part of my credits now, that I'm Amazon Prime comedian, as well as because of you introduced me to Mark Ellis, and then I was able to perform at the Comedy Store. So, I mean, that itself, I mean, I don't know too many people here in Hawaii that can say they performed at the Comedy Store. I mean, it's not like I walk around like, Comedy Store. Got my big 3 minutes, which I was not used to. 3 minutes, boom, like that, and it's done.
Yeah, no, it was cool, man. I was glad, I've lived in LA for a long time, so I just know a lot of people. And I was glad I was able to just help out getting you some stage time and everything. And that is living in Hawaii is awesome. It's beautiful and all that, but LA's fantastic for just like all there's great comedians there and the stage time. And, you can really develop and hone your skills as a comic.
It's weird. So I'm still new to this, using streaming, and we're doing this interview like this. And you know how comics, they pick on these little things that I'm like, wait, you look taller than me in this. I'm listening to you, but the thing is like, why does he look taller than me? I got to set my camera up a certain way. Am I too close? I got to back up a little bit.
Yes, it is hilarious. That is hilarious. If people knew I'm 5'10" and you're 6'7", so there's like, this is the only time I'm gonna look like I'm taller than you is when we do this StreamYard thing. I remember because when we met at the Pipeline Cafe on Oahu, and then I came back to, I'd come back once a year usually to Oahu to do shows, and you were promoting shows back then, and you set some show up to do, I think, at Hawaiian Brian's, and you set up an interview for us to do Hawaii News Now.
Oh yeah.
And that was so cool because it's like, for the people watching, it's a morning news show. It's like a Good Morning Detroit or whatever. It's like that, but for the state of Hawaii. And we were on the show, and they had us, we're on this like couch, and they cut to us. And when we come back from the break, we're going to talk to comedians James Monahan and Graham Elwood. They see us waving on the couch. We came back. I made this joke. I said, boy, I look like sitting next to you on a couch. I was like, I look like some small child. And then you joked on camera. You said, help us raise money for these starving children. I remember
these starving comedians from LA who are so little.
So thin and malnourished.
Yeah.
We really need to feed them.
Yeah. The poor comedians of the West Coast.
They're just not getting enough food. Yeah. They're just having a hard time.
Yeah, that was a great time. Let me just take a quick break to mention my sponsors, if you will. You know how it is. You got to pay the bills. So those of you that are watching, you guys can see me with this beautiful shirt. Let me back up a little bit. This shirt is from Oahu Golf Apparel, and they're the official sponsor of the Hawaii Comedy with James Mane podcast. See, I love these shirts. They're light. They're comfortable. They're flexible. I mean, meaning, if I was to do yoga, which I don't, but if I was to, I could. And it's really comfortable. OahuGolfApparel.com is where you can get some of these shirts. They have hats, t-shirts, golf accessories, and are locally produced in Honolulu, Hawaii. They offer fun, stylish activewear on or off the course. Make Oahu Golf Apparel a part of your game. So go ahead and hit them up. Also want to give a shout out to Pancakes and Waffles Hawaii. Last night, my daughter, her boyfriend, and myself went to go eat and tried some of their food. They don't just do breakfast, by the way. I love breakfast, but they don't. I had actually Calbee Loco, which is like Loco Moco, but without the hamburger patty. It was Calbee meat, and it was delicious. And I also had a churro waffle, which is amazing as well. Check them out at pancakesandwaffleshawaii.com. They have two locations, one in City Square Shopping Plaza in Kalihi and Waimalu Shopping Plaza in Aiea. So you guys can go ahead and check them out. And then, this is special. Okay, Graham, I gotta do this here right quick. It'll be edited in the audio part, but let me go ahead and play this. I'm still learning the bells and whistles of these buttons, but I got to do my intro music, which I'm proud of, which Graham Elwood helped with, by the way. So let me, let's see.
And I see Johnny Rocks Hollywood in the chat and Facebook. What's up, Johnny Rocks?
He will be a future guest as well. Let me see here. So I click on that. I remove us. All right, that's beautiful music from. Wait, where am I? Okay, beautiful music from Tavana. Tavana, you can follow him on social media. Let's see, his website is tavana808.com. Tavana is a multi-instrumentalist from Honolulu, Hawaii, who uses electronic drum triggers to lay down a variety of grooves with his feet while simultaneously playing guitar, banjo, lap steel, or ukulele, and singing soulful, island-inspired rock and blues.
He's also a funny cat too. We did a show with him at Blue Note several months ago, like back over the summer, and he was like doing comedy and like music and stuff. The guy's a very, very talented man.
Yeah, and then I did not know until he was doing we were doing stand up in the same showcase that he's Samoan. I did not know. I was
what?
Like, yeah, see, I thought he was a Hawaiian, but nothing against that. But I did not know he was Samoan. So it's funny because he comes up to me after and he's like, "Hey, you're Samoan, right?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I am." And he goes, "Oh, me too." I was like, "What?" And we're both just like, we're not the stereotypical Samoan, but it it was trying to say without insulting Samoans. It's like we're different, but in a good way.
Isn't that your whole TikTok? Is basically just making fun of Samoans? Isn't that pretty much?
Whoa, I can say that, Graham. I can say
I
that.
know
You can.
I can't.
You're not. Hey, whoa. But yeah, it's. So I guess the stereotypical Samoan, which everybody probably thinks of, is shoot. I'm trying. Maybe somebody can help me. Maybe I need to do research on that. So we're both representing the culture in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the most, I guess the worst thing that we do is that we don't speak the language. So that is not a good thing. My dad used to tease me and say, "You're not real Samoan because you don't speak the language." But it's not just Samoans that do that. I know other cultures. I think Mexico is like that as well. I can't speak for any other culture. I don't know all of them, but I know they give there are people a hard time who can't speak their native language.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's me.
There's sort of a lot of sort of second and third generation immigrants to America are like that. Like they don't speak the language of wherever their parents or grandparents came from.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're lucky in a sense because I guess I'm assuming you're Irish.
Yeah, I'm of Irish descent, but I don't actually speak like Gaelic, like old school. I can't speak that. I mean, obviously I speak English, but like old school Irish, I can't speak.
Wait a minute. There's another language. I
Oh
thought
yeah,
Irish.
dude. Yes, yes.
I thought Irish speak English.
No, not Gaelic. I mean, old Gaelic is like a different language.
What is Gaelic? Man, I gotta look that up then.
It's yeah. There's all these words in Ireland that like I would never. I don't know. I mean, like I'm of Irish descent. I don't. A lot of people say I'm Irish or whatever. I mean, but if I was in Ireland, they'd say you're an American. They would call me American.
Yeah, which is and it's actually an insult from them.
Right.
Like,
Oh yeah, it's definitely yes, yes.
Yeah.
They're definitely saying you're an American who might have some Irish ancestry. Is what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, I guess I gotta look into that. So is that what like the Celtics used to speak?
Uh-huh.
Oh, interesting. I thought white people was just white people. So I didn't know. I didn't know you guys had like. Now I'm insulting you, and I apologize. I didn't know you guys had
like a whole continent of people. It's just like saying, Ireland, France, whatever. Like y'all spoke some crazy languages back in the day.
I was like, we're just white. Oh, okay. What do we do? I don't know. We look at brown people and we say, I think I want to take that. I think you see how they're having a good time. I think I wanted to go take that.
Well, again, Ireland didn't do any of that. They got conquered by the English. So
it's the English that started doing this.
Well, it was the English and the French and the Danish and the Italians and the Spanish and the Portuguese. They all did.
I see. That's why their language are all over the place. And you guys. So if you guys didn't get taken over by England, you guys be speaking Gaelic.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, there's an old thing. This is in a lot of Irish bars. You'll see this of like God created whiskey to keep the Irish from taking over the world. So the Irish just to spread pubs around the planet.
Do you have a sample like if I was to speak Samoan, I could a little bit because my parents spoke it to me, but unfortunately I was raised here. I actually grew up in a neighborhood mostly Asians. So I can't speak their language, but I know their culture very well. So I mean, but I can speak a little bit Samoan. can they have you like? Do you have like if you were to there was a role for you in this big movie, Steven Spielberg's like, I need you to speak Gaelic. Let me see what you got.
Oh, I
Would you
would
be
not do
able to?
well. I mean, I can tell you a couple terms like Sinn Fein, Seinfein, which is Gaelic. It means ourselves alone, and that's um, an Irish independent saying, right? So when you know, it's not disputed really anymore. But so Northern Ireland is part of England, and Ireland is its own country, the Republic of Ireland. And so that
Right.
Northern Ireland was very disputed in the 60s and 70s. It got really ugly. What was called, and even in the 80s, called the Troubles. So you had
Trouble.
uh, ourselves alone was the battle cry of the IRA, which is the Irish Republican Army, which is basically like a paramilitary organization. And so they said Sinn Fein was the sort of political arm of the IRA. So they spoke Gaelic. They were like very much back to their roots. And that's where, and it wasn't Catholics versus Protestants, but it really kind of fell along those lines. If you were Protestant, you kind of typically favored England, and if you were Catholic, you typically favored Ireland. So you know, there was a lot of brutal bloodshed in Northern Ireland, particularly Belfast, as a result. And then there was the Ulster Defence Force, which was another paramilitary organization that was very pro-England, and so you basically had a lot of that movie. There's a movie that just came out called Belfast, which is about that and how a lot of Irish families had to leave.
Sinn Fein.
Yeah, Sinn Fein means ourselves alone.
Man, I was not expecting to be this serious, Graham Elwood.
You gotta be careful, man.
I appreciate it, but I was thinking like you'd be like very like cartoony, like you know, like Leprechaun. Ah, I got me a Leprechaun.
Oh, you wanted me to talk like Mrs. Doubtfire or something like that, with the Lucky Charms character?
Lucky, that's what I was expecting. Like, purple horseshoes and green clovers and
Green clovers. Hey, Mrs. Doubtfire. Like that's the thing. I
was
did
this
think
she's
that
Scottish?
I will bring this full circle.
Okay.
One of the first jokes I did, because I emceed the First Nations Comedy Experience. It wasn't because I was like, oh, we need a white guy to MC this. It was because they didn't have a lot of money. And it was like Micah Wright, the head of the network, who was Native, came to me and he said, Graham, we're looking for TV shows. And I said, how about a Native stand-up comedy? He goes, we've been trying to do this for a while. Mm-hmm. And I said, I could put this, they didn't have a lot of money. And I said, I can wear all these hats. I can cast it. I can produce it, direct it. I even did audience warm up, and I said I can even MC it to save money. So one of the first bits I did on that show, I said, because people talk about cultural appropriation, and that's a big thing. And, especially like white people on Halloween dressing up like Native Americans. Native Americans are very offended at that, as well they should be. Mm-hmm. You've got all these like white girls going, my grandma was a Cherokee princess and all this stuff. And so there's a lot of comics on the show that did great jokes and social commentary about that. But my opening bit was like, I'm of Irish descent. And I said, I totally understand cultural appropriation. The audience is mostly Native. They kind of looked at me like, what? And I said, every St. Patrick's Day, do we celebrate all the, great contributions that the Irish have made to the world, like all of the poets like Yeats and Annie Enright, and their contributions like Notre Dame University or President Kennedy. Nope. Everybody just gets drunk, dresses up like the Lucky Charms character, and talks like Mrs. Doubtfire. And I was like, and drinks green beer. So that's the big contribution, is we're going to litter the streets with green vomit. So
that's what it is. It's what they think of you is how they celebrate. So like they think of Native Americans as what they saw in the Western country Western movies and all that, very ignorant. So then they look and they say, what about the Irish? Oh, green. Yeah. And leprechaun and drunk. Yes. Yes. And their national flower, the 4-leaf clover.
Yeah.
Yes. Purple horseshoes and green clovers and blue diamonds. Yes. That's what Irish is.
Let's the summation of Irish culture is just that and a pub.
Right. But they don't do that in any other country, right? Like they don't celebrate like I guess because I guess America's supposed to be a melting pot where
Uh-huh.
you don't go to Italy and they're like, "Oh, St. Patrick's Day." I mean, do they?
I don't know.
I
They
got
might. Who
I
knows?
got homework to do. Maybe somebody can research that and comment and let us know. But can you imagine a whole village of Italians just in green and arr, I don't know. I don't know why they turn into pirates. Gar. It's like, green clovers. Gar. Ah,
Well,
pasta.
there's no other like holiday where we celebrate stereotypes. It's not like it's Italian Appreciation Day, so we're all going to eat pasta and do mob hits. Like they don't do that. So
Oh. And then if the worst part is if they had done like a Russian day, they start hacking everybody or invading their neighbors, even though the other neighbors are saying you shouldn't do that. We shouldn't invade them. I'm sorry, off track. But speaking of shows, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about because, and the reason I really and I really do love your game show host voice.
well, thank you, James Money. It's always a pleasure to be on Comedy Hawaii with James Money.
Yeah, that thing, that old bag. But so you were on a show called Cram, and it's funny because as going over some of the episodes today, my daughter Tyler, who was looking at, she's like, "So they're supposed to keep running?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's like two different things that has really nothing to do with each other, but then they cram it together." And it was so the episode we were watching. She was like, "Wait, these people stayed up all night?" And yeah, they stay up all night and they cram, like they study, and then the next day, without sleeping, they're supposed to do physical things and then answer quizzes at the same time. And she was like, "People watched this?"
Well, only 2 seasons worth, Tyler. That's why I had to go back on the road.
But what I want to know is, so was this something you pitched, or was this something that was going on, and then you just became the host? I mean, the name Cram and Graham kind of, like it could have been where you all of a sudden, it's like, hey, it fits. I should be the host. Although I did see an episode that with a different host.
You might have seen the April Fool's episode where we all switched jobs on the Game Show Network. I did not pitch the show. I think what had happened was I had already hosted this show Strip Poker on the USA Network, and I had already done a couple of pilots, one for the Game Show Network, and so Bob Bowden, who was the vice president at Game Show Network at the time, he knew who I was and was a fan of my work. And then the producers, James Rowley and Mark Cronin, also knew from me because they auditioned me for Beat the Geeks, and they hired two other hosts, two comics that I know that are very funny guys. J. Keith Van Stratton and Blaine Capatch both hosted that show. It was a time in the late 90s, early 2000s when game shows were making a resurgence, and they were hiring a lot of comedians to host shows. So I did that. I mean, Greg Proops hosted a show. Chris Hardwick hosted a show. Jimmy Pardo hosted a show.
And so it's coming back around, too. I mean, a lot of stand-up comedians are starting to host all these game shows again.
Yeah, there's always like a every 20-year cycle where game shows come back, it seems.
But none like Cram, though.
Nothing was like Cram. So I don't know who came up with the idea. I have no idea, but they hired me to do the pilot, and there were these two. So Mark Cronin and James Rowley were a production team, and then there was this other guy who was, I forget, it was Mark Goodson. If you ever watch old school game shows in the 70s and 80s, Mark Goodson production. So it was his son. I forget his son's name. And they all own the idea together, or some. I don't know what the legal thing was, but these two production teams did the pilot, and they had hired me to do the pilot, and it was like very confusing because I had like all these different producers giving me all these different notes, and they were contradicting with each other. And I was like, I was trying to be, a team player and do all this stuff like that. And Bob Bowden, who I'm still friends with, and I love Bob Bowden. I actually just talked to him about pitching him a game show, and he was interested. In, like Bob Bowden's a really good guy, and he knows more about game shows than anybody. Bob, like at one point, he pulled me aside. And he goes, "Hey man, I know this is tough." And I jokingly said, "I go, Bob, do you think we could get some more producers on the show giving me contradictory notes?" And he starts laughing because it was like, and when you're talent, you're just like, I'll just do whatever you say. And then like one guy's telling me one thing, another guy's telling me another thing. And I was like getting a little frustrated. And then they were trying to make it, one of the producers, not Mark Cronin or James Rowley, who are two guys that I like and respect, but this other guy who like worked for Mark Goodson's son was like trying to act like I was being like a difficult, like a diva. And I was like, man, you guys don't even know what you're talking about. And so I just said to Bob Owen, I go, look, man, I go, Bob. And then he started laughing. He goes, I'm sorry. I go, Bob, you all talk, whatever the note is, just one of you tell me and I'll do it. But don't have five guys tell me five things. And he just kind of laughed. And then he's like, all right, I got it. So it ended up, the series got bought. The network bought it. And then they had to, like, the Mark Goodson's production team became like silent partners. And so then I just dealt directly with James and Mark Cronin, and they were fantastic. And I love working with those guys. And we had such a blast on the show. It was so much fun. And we even did some celebrity episodes.
Well, the thing that when we were watching, I was like, man, this is the most anybody has talked in 30 minutes, because you were just going, and I was like, oh my goodness.
There were so many rules. And like, I would get to the set, send me the script the night before, whatever, and I'd have to burn through. Then I get to the set and I'd burn through all of this teleprompter. And I test it. And then there was like, it was crazy because we would do like, there was all these like turning to camera. So I'd be like over here at the steering wheel and I'd be looking at this camera and there'd be a TV next to it with all of the rules. And then I'd move to this camera and there'd be a whole new set. And so like if the teleprompters screwed up or the TV wasn't in the right place, I was just like, and it was so many rules. And I was like,
because it's funny because so Price is Right. The game comes on. There's some games like that we have seen many times for the past 10, 20 years, like Plinko. Oh, we know they're going to drop the things in there. Or the guy going up, the hill climber. And then yours is like, no one knows how this game is played. So you have to explain it, but there's like 30 things you have to do.
30.
It's like, so you're going to, and then you start the game. And you have to ask all these questions if they get it right or wrong, or right. And it's like, what?
It was so nuts. I were just being like, the rules were so long. Like, all right, both Kramers have to pick this. When they pick that, they put it on that thing. Now, before they do that, they have to do this. But at first, this thing is weighed. And then they have to weigh part of it, but not in metrics. Like, it was just insane. And then I'm asking, it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. The crew was really fun because it was mainly it was the same director, Brian DePiero, that did Strip Poker, that did this. And so it was just these game show guys. And
well, there was the model that there was in the episode we watched. There was this blonde model. I guess she.
I see.
So, and it's so funny because out of nowhere, she's just like in front of the camera while you guys are setting up something. She's just like, boom. And then she moves away. It's like, what happened? What was she there for? It's like, what happened? Was she just distraction? Like, we didn't see what is happening. They did a magic trick on us. And then the finale or the grand game at the end where you cannot touch the floor. Like, they need to have both of their feet up on something that they're standing on. And then you read the question as they're not touching the floor. When they lose their balance and touch the floor, you start all over again. So there's a part where you're just like, what? And they keep losing their balance, keep touching the floor, and they keep trying to go back up. And then you go, what?
Yeah.
So it's like 10 times in a row. You just go, what? Because they keep touching the floor. So you have to start the question over. And it was like, wow, who thought of this game?
The most insane shit. I
Yeah.
remember just being like, wait, what are you guys? And I had to, like, the rules were insane. I remember that. It was so crazy. But yeah, Icy, she's from Iceland. And she was a sweetheart. She was great to work with. She actually, we follow each other on Instagram, and she's married. She had just had a baby.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I remember. And then, yeah, she was from Iceland, and her real, actually, Icelandic name is like, Bergelind Olaf's daughter or something like that. But she's just like,
Oh,
just call me Icy. And I was like, all right,
thank you.
that's, that's a lot easier. Um, yeah, that show was, somebody just posted a picture from Cram on Instagram.
Oh, sheesh.
And I was like, oh, wow, I guess I got to post this on Throwback Thursday. But
And it's funny because you weren't wearing like traditional game show host clothes. It was very Gen X looking. Like,
yeah. It was definitely early 2000s Gen X
yeah,
clothes.
yeah. And I was like, yeah, this is some dated stuff right here. It's like,
Yeah, a lot of baggy. Yeah, it was like I was in khaki pants. They always had me in like khaki pants because when I did strip poker, it was definitely like late 90s, early 2000s. That like Vince Vaughn sort of Vegas party wear, like shiny bowling shirts with the flaming martini glasses. Like, it was all about the bowling shirts in the late 1990s.
like Guy Fieri look.
Yes, it was like definitely like that. It was like,
which he wears to this day.
yeah, he's still wearing. And so then the early 2000s, so Cram was like, well, let's get in, whatever, what they wanted me to, I don't know. Because
You look like a college kid right out of school. It's basically like,
yeah,
you say, hey, let's get that kid over there who's just coming out from the commons and see if he'll read these cards.
well, because it was like based on cramming for an exam. So I think they
Yeah.
wanted me to look like some college kid or whatever, even though I was like, whatever, 30 something when that show came out.
Right.
But yeah. And I remember I was able to keep a lot of those bowling shirts from strip poker. And I remember I had them, and it was like 2005 or 2006. So it was a good like 6-7 years after strip poker ended. And I was literally about to donate them. And somebody emailed me through my website, like, I'm a huge fan. Do you have any more of those shirts? And they bought a bunch of them from me as like collector's items. And I was like, all right.
Ooh, one day I'll sell these and make
There you
20
go, buddy.
bucks. 20 bucks.
Get yourself a local moco plate at Zippy's.
Boom. But so that was a cool experience in your life. Was that? Oh, you said it was. You were a stand-up comedian before, so you got into that. But like, how much? Like, so when you started stand-up comedy, you started in the Chicago area.
Actually, I started when I was a freshman at the University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona. So I was 18, and I did and I think that this is actually on my YouTube channel. I did my first ever stand-up comedy competition. And the MC was a young guy wearing a mullet and acid wash jeans by the name of Judd Apatow.
Wow.
And it was the Sticklets U.S. College Comedy Competition, sponsored by Sticklets, a defunct gum company, and Doritos.
And Dorito.
Yes, nothing goes better with Doritos than gum.
Yes.
So
it's the new nachos of the 1990s. Reinventing nachos with gum.
It's really
Sticklets.
made no sense. But
Yeah.
that was the first time I did stand up. I was 18 years old. And then I got kind of hooked on it, and I started doing open mics at Laughs Comedy Club, which I think is still open in Tucson. And I was in a comedy group in Tucson, Arizona called the Comedy Corner.
The name of the group is called Comedy Corner?
Yeah. And we used to do an hour of sketches noon on Fridays. I don't know. I think they do it at night now, but we used to do noon on Fridays in this basement of the student union, this room called The Cellar. And
how did you guys come up with that name, though? It's like, hey, we got to come up with a group name. How about we be like a location?
Yeah, they just called it Comedy Corner. And it was actually, the group was started by Gary Shandling, because he was from
Really?
Tucson. Yeah.
All right. That's what I get for making fun of something. And it's like, hey, no, it's legit. Gary Shandling.
A lot of history. and Pete Murrieta came out of that group, and he's actually like he's a showrunner for sitcoms and stuff. And so I did that all throughout college, and I did stand up through college. And then when I graduated, I went back to Chicago where I was from. And then that's when I really started working professionally. I was waiting tables the first year, and I was doing open mics. And at the time in the early 90s, Chicago had like 14 clubs in the Chicago area so there was all this work. And I just busted my ass to get in with all these clubs. And after a year after graduating college, I was able to quit my job waiting tables and make my living full time on the road.
Wow.
Now, it was cool. And now that part of it is like, the rent in Chicago at that time. I had roommates, so I was paying $300 a month in rent or something like that, and gas was $1 a gallon. So it was easy to go on you could fill your car up for $20 on the road. But yeah, I was able to make a living, and I met a lot of really great comics that, many of whom are still working today. Jimmy Pardo, Paul Gilmartin. I mean, people like Mike Schmidt, his brother Lenny Schmidt. I met all these people, Mike Siegel. And then I just started working. I just started working the road heavy, and that's all I did. Because within a 6-hour drive from Chicago, you could fill your calendar, and you probably still can. And so I just took every gig I could get. And I was like, by the time I was 22 years old, 23 years old, I was making my living as a stand-up comic.
So I listening to what you just said, I guess vouching or impressing other comics who have an established career and having them vouch for you pretty much helps out a lot, I guess, when you're trying to get into stand-up comedy and being able to perform all over the place.
Yeah, because look, stand-up, it's really, really hard, and everyone wants to be a comic or thinks they can do it, but to actually be like a professional, like where you're going to deliver every night and be funny in front of a room full of people, once you've proven you can do that, then comics go, oh, this guy's good, or I want him to open for me, or when they recommend you to a club, or they would request that you be the opening or the MC or whatever. That's how I got so much work, was just older comics. And in Chicago, because you could fill your calendar, there was all these comics that were professional headliners. And they had some TV credits because there was a million TV shows back then that you could do stand up on. Now it's like it's kind of resurgent back, and there's all these like online specials or whatever, but all these people had all these TV credits, and they were living in Chicago or even just other cities in the Midwest, and they filled their calendars, and they all make good livings, and they were like professionals. And I got to really see how they addressed their career, their professional comedy career. They'd go to the club, they'd work on new stuff, and and again, this is pre-internet, this is pre-cell phone.
Right.
You had to like mail a VHS tape to the club, which sometimes worked. Most of the time it didn't. I remember driving hours to clubs just to do a showcase in front of the booker, just to do 10 minutes on their showcase night, or the headliner. I knew them, and the headliner got me a guest spot on like the Friday late show, and we knew the club owner you always hope the club owner or booker was going to be in the room. Sometimes they weren't. Sometimes they were in the back of the room not paying attention, and sometimes they'd watch you and go, oh man, you rocked. And they sometimes you get off stage and they go, what dates do you have open? And I had an old school calendar book. Like, again, it was a whole nother era.
Like a trapper keeper?
Yeah, I literally had like a trapper keeper. Then I'd be like, let me see. March 93, open. So yeah, it was, and I went on the road, and then some headliners would take me on the road with them, like Mike Toomey. I went on the road with him a bunch, and he was such a solid act. And these guys like Mike Toomey, Bill Leff, Carla Felicia, they worked in Zane, and I got in with the clubs like Zanies, and there was this club, the Zanies, which is still there, and my headshot's still on the wall in the downtown Zanies from 1992. I look like I'm 14.
Yeah, it's like that guy became the host of Cram. Like, who were like some of the comics that inspired you? So you obviously weren't thinking about doing stand-up comedy in high school and when you were younger, and then until you did this not talent show, but a contest, and then
Mhm.
some like was there somebody for me? It was like Mitch Hedberg. Like I didn't know
Mhm.
he was dead when I was listening to him before I started,
Mhm.
but listening to him, listen, of course Chappelle and some of the other comics. Like, I think for me when I was a kid it was only Eddie Murphy. That I
Mhm.
knew because there was no YouTube, there was no where I could find all these videos where it's you just came across them because somebody
Mhm.
else was watching. So like who like when you got the bug and then who kind of like you watch and say I hope one day I work with that person. Was there
Well,
somebody for you like that?
you know, even as a kid, I loved comedy. And the kid in the 70s, this is when the comedy album was big. And I remember like we would have family part, like our family and these other families would all get together for like Christmas or have big dinners or spaghetti dinners or whatever. And we would all, I remember distinctly everyone in somebody's living room, like two or three families. So you're talking about 15, 20 people, parents and kids, all listening to Steve Martin's album,
Mm,
like Let's Get Small. And I remember as a kid, the only night of the week I could stay up past my bedtime was like Friday, Saturday night. So Saturday I would watch Saturday Night Live and I'd watch the opening monologue, and then I would stay up late and I'd watch the Tonight Show. And again, and so I watched comedy. I was like infatuated with it. And one of the, again, full circle to the FNX comedy show,
mm,
I saw Charlie Hill, which was the first Native American to do stand up on TV in the 70s.
mm,
He was on Richard Pryor's show. And I remember his opening act. He came out and did this joke that was like this signature Charlie Hill bit, because he's introduced as, well, they didn't say Native American back then. They said American Indian. They
right.
said he's an American Indian comedian, ladies and gentlemen, with Richard Pryor. And here's Charlie Hill. And he comes out and he goes, hi, how are you? Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Hi, how are you? Like, I remember that. And I remember being a little kid and I like thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And he's like the most famous Native American comic that's ever lived.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so on an episode of First Nations Comedy Experience, we had Larry Omaha, who is like the most famous comic now that Charlie Hill's passed away. And he started, like, Larry Omaha was a young comic when Charlie Hill had already kind of started to break in the late 70s, early 80s, and was on the Tonight Show. And he was like kind of blowing up a little bit.
Mm,
And so Larry Omaha worked with him. And so to honor Charlie, we opened the show with that clip from the Richard Pryor show on the First Nations Comedy Experience. You can see Charlie Hill. We technically had him on our show. And so I grew up just loving watching stand-up comedy. Didn't know I was going to be one, but I
mm.
remember my mom would always say that I would tell her when I was in high school, I'm never going to have a job where I got to wear a suit. And I just realized I never wanted to have a real job. And so when I started,
Technically, you still don't. I
I still
mean,
don't, I do not have a real job. This is my YouTube studio. It's not a real job.
yeah.
I do not have a real job. I couldn't function in regular society, James. I just don't know how to. Um,
That's my motivation. It's like I do not want to go back to help desk. If I
yeah,
answer another call in a call center, I'm gonna just smash my head against the wall.
yeah, I can't, I wouldn't, I haven't had to work in an office for some company in 20 some. I wouldn't know what to do. I really would not know how I couldn't function. I wouldn't know how to
First, you
do
would have to go to HR and get the rules because you probably break a lot of them while you're there. It's like,
I don't think I would last a week.
yeah,
I
especially
think I would be,
especially if you walk in, you're like, "Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you?" Oh, red flag, suspension, Graham Elwood right off the bat.
I'd be like, no, it's Charlie Hill. He's a funny guy. Like, uh,
Sorry.
but like, yeah. So when I was in college and started doing stand up, that's when I started watching stand up on TV religiously, like
Mm-hmm.
nonstop. And when I was in college, I got to open up for Barry Sobel. He was a big name act at the time. I got to open up for Carol Leifer,
Mm.
who, was like friends with Jerry Seinfeld. The character Elaine is modeled after Carol Leifer
Mm-hmm.
on the Seinfeld show. And then Paul Reiser. I got to open up for Paul Reiser
Wow.
all in college.
I love
And
his writing.
oh,
It's
it was
amazing.
I was so cool opening up. I mean, for these 3 big name acts, and they were big theater shows on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to do like 10, 15 minutes up top. It was the coolest thing. And so I became sort of a name on campus. And then I just started watching all these comics on TV. So I was like, I absorbed, I just couldn't get enough of it. And so when I graduated and moved to Chicago, then I started to see these comics that I'd seen on TV. And I just was like, I wanted to work with all of them. And I met Mitch Hedberg. You know, I did a couple sets with him at the Hollywood Improv. And then when I moved to LA, I started emceeing at the Hollywood Improv as a young guy in his 20s. And so, holy shit, that was nuts. Like Drew Carey pops in, Seinfeld pops in,
Wow.
Chris Rock pops in. I mean, it was like these giant mega names were there every night.
That's insane. It's kind of like for, like, say for like a kid who's playing football, and then he's training in the weight room, and all of a sudden, you know, like Tom Brady walks in to work out, and then Aaron Rodgers walks in to work out, and then, you know, it's like, because like I've talked to, I was lucky enough I was able to open for Chappelle, who was one of the guys I've always wanted to, you know, in fact, part of the way I talk on stage, in my head, I'm picturing Chappelle sometimes, and it has that kind of cadence. But when I met him and we were talking after the show, and he's talking about, oh yeah, I was talking to so and so, but he'll say like, yeah, I was talking to Martin about da da da, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know who Martin is. He talking about Martin Lawrence? You know, and he was, you know, like. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to like other people. But he was mentioning names, like big names, but just saying the first name. Like Steven Tyler from Aerosmith was in the crowd, and then he go, "Hey Steve," and then, "Hey Dave, good show." And you know, it's like, it's such a trip to see these giant celebrities just talk to each other like they're just regular people. Like, if I was to become famous one day and I still bumped into Arnold Schwarzenegger or something, I'd still be like, oh my God, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. But they weren't. They were just like, oh yeah, that's just Jim. That's just, you know, like just regular people. You know, it's like, you know, it's cool and kind of insane too. So like you're saying, where you see all these people that show up at the Improv, that's especially like if you see like Seinfeld, like holy crap, that's Seinfeld.
I mean, you know, and then, you know, just living in LA, there's celebrities everywhere. I remember just in a pickup basketball game with like Jamie Kennedy and Nick Schwartzen, like friends of mine. And it was before Nick blew up, you know, and, you know, one time Leonardo DiCaprio popped into the game.
Wow.
Pickup basketball, Leonardo DiCaprio, and he was gardening.
Working on Basketball Diaries.
Yeah.
We got a comment from Kehal Jackson. It says, he makes a key point that some comics ignore, which is immerse yourself in comedy. So I want to give a shout out to Kehal Jackson, who is in Australia, and she's a Hawaiian lady that I've met here years ago in Chinatown doing comedy, and she is doing stand-up comedy in Australia.
Really love Australia. I toured there. I've toured there several times. Last time, November of 2019, like only a couple months before the shutdown. I can't wait to go back. I love Australia. I got friends down there, and that's the great thing about doing podcasting and YouTube is then I got fans down there too. I absolutely love Australia, and they got great comedy crowds down there.
Well, when you were gonna leave LA, you were talking like, well, I'm gonna either choose between Hawaii or Australia, and I was like, well, let's see. You can go to Hawaii, which is paradise in the middle of the Pacific, or you can go to Australia and get killed by an ant or a poisonous. Every animal in Australia can kill you, and most of them want to kill you. So yeah, you know, you come to Hawaii, you know, you don't have no snakes.
Nothing.
Yeah,
no, nothing.
Just the locals. So
that's the only thing.
Yeah. So I had to teach you how to do the proper shaka. I had to teach you, okay, brada. It's pronounced brada.
Hey, brada.
Yeah.
I pronounced Kalakaua wrong, and you almost took away my Kaima Aina card. And I remember I was like, oh man, this
actually did that pretty good just now.
Thank you.
Yeah,
see, you corrected me because I was calling it Kalakaua, and you're like, no.
I was like, what? You know, but to be honest, it could be properly pronounced that. I don't know. I don't really know. Could be Kalakaua or Kalakaua. But the way locals say it is a certain way, which is Kalakaua. Like, I think that's the giveaway. So when you say a Hawaiian word different from the way locals say it, then we say he's gonna get robbed. So
That's why I'm like, I gotta say these words right. That's why I'm
yeah,
like, I really am saying like Honolulu. I don't say
yes,
Honolulu like with my Chicago
yes,
accent. I
yes.
say Hawaii. I gotta make sure I say that right.
You can even just say it like where you just like you're falling asleep. Oh, Hawaii. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't really give too much effort because that's the hang loose attitude. You know, it's kind of like. So, and then most locals usually shorten things up anyways. I was talking on the last episode where some words that we should just get rid of already, and Raj is one of them. Raj, which is short for Raja, which is also short for Roger, and like affirmative or Roger. So they started saying Raja, Raja. Now they're saying Raj. I'm like, just enough. That's it. That is enough. Let's just get rid of that word. Like so when you started out, you've got advice from some awesome people. What is like one that kind of you stick? It still sticks in your head till today. One for me is Kenny Anderson, the blind comedian who performs in Waikiki or was performing in Waikiki, and I was talking to him before the week before I was gonna do my first stage time. Asked him which was I'm nervous. You have any advice for somebody who's going to try it for the first time? And he said, don't try to be funny. Just get up and experience the anxieties. Over time, you'll be able to handle the anxieties. It'll get easier to deal with. And then you start focusing on being funny. But right now, just experience the anxieties, understand that they're there, and I was like, man. And so when new comics, I tell them that. I say, well, this was what's shared with me. Take it however you want. Good luck.
Yeah, stand-up comedy, especially like the older I get, and it is a beautiful art form that doesn't get enough respect because it's done in bars and nightclubs, and some comics, say swear words or whatever. But it is an art form that most people cannot do. I mean, if you think about the United States has roughly 330 million people. And I don't know, I'm guessing here, but I'm guessing there's maybe 800 like actual professional working comedians who make their living doing comedy. I mean, there's 1,500 guys in the NFL, just to give you an idea of. So, and I've been doing it long enough to see people that were funny comics that came and went. I've seen all the open micers not make it. I've seen comics have big TV careers and then still are working in the clubs. I mean, I did all this TV and I'm still doing it. And so I really love the craft of joke writing, and I appreciate people that appreciate comedy and that have a respect for this art form. You know what I mean? Like it's just, you can't just get up there and fuck around or whatever. Like people that are like really trying and serious and asking questions, because that's what I did when I was younger. I mean, I went on the road with, and I remember working with Ross Schaefer in Phoenix, and he'd already done a bunch of TV, and he was a headliner, and I was the feature act. So I was doing a half-hour set every night, and he was doing 45 to an hour. And I asked him, I said, hey man, do you mind watching my set and just giving me some solid, some advice. And at that point, probably been doing stand-up for, 6-7 years, and I was making my living doing it. So I wasn't some like open micer, and I was but I was like, he was a pro. He was a good 10, 15 years older than me. He had done all this television, and his act was polished. He was a professional. And he gave me great advice. He said, when you're on stage, Graham, you're scanning over the audience. He goes, you're moving your head around too much. He goes, talk to sections of the comedy club. Like, do your introduction here, your middle here, your middle there. And I was like, wow. And he said, don't swear so much. He goes, you're this like, Midwestern boy next door, like work cleaner, which I have and have not taken that advice over the years. But it was solid advice, and he, gave me some tips on this joke or that joke. but he really just was talking to me about technique, not even really joke writing, but like technique. Because I had good jokes. I mean, I was writing, I was funny, and a friend of mine that I was in the comedy group with in college came to that show, and he's like, "Wow, man, you are really polished. You are a solid act." Because I was on the road 45 weeks a year. I mean, that was when I was doing. That's all I did. And so I just remember that. And Ross Schaefer was like, he was a professional and he had done TV, and I saw how I also saw how these professional headliners interacted with like the club owner and the bar staff. Like they weren't in the way. They weren't, some of the guys were jackasses that were just trying to get laid all the time. But a lot of them were just like, stay out of the waitress's way, that the bar's where the money's made. You know what I mean? Tip the bar staff well. And they were like pros, and I saw them, and I even saw them. They like the cool headliners. There were some dicks or whatever, but the cool headliners would we'd bond on the road because we'd be in some town in the middle of nowhere, and it was kind of like us against the world. And the headliners were cool. They'd like take you out one night a week. They'd take the MC and the feature act out, and let me grab you guys dinner, because they knew what it's like to be a 25-year-old road act. You need a free meal matters. And like guys like Christopher Titus, I worked with him in Milwaukee years ago, and he was like starting to come up, and he was a really cool guy. And just little things like Saturday night, we all got paid, right? And they pay you in cash. And several headliners would go, "Hey, let's all walk out to our cars together," because they knew like, you're in some small town or some bar, and the locals might know it's payday for the comics. And might jump you in the parking lot and take, $1,000 off in cash, and you just had cash. And he's like, it was like, there was this like, "Hey, let's all look out for each other on the road here."
Nice.
And there were some comics that did that, and then some of the female there wasn't as many female comics back then, but the ones I worked with, some of them were really cool. And I remember one, kind of blanking on her name, but she's like, I was in her, after a show, she was like giving me something in her hotel room, and she's showing me, "Oh, I got mace, I got a taser, I was like,
Wow.
damn." She goes, "I'm a woman on the road." I really understood, like, wow.
That's something you don't think about as a man. You don't think about how it is for a woman, especially back in the days. I mean, now, we see more about what they're experiencing and what they're going through, and then now, so we're kind of like, well, we didn't realize that we were all assholes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
And they would, so when I remember when she showed me that, and I got two older sisters, I was like, oh, so anytime I worked with a female comic on the road, I'd be like, "Let me walk you to your room or your car or whatever. I'm not hitting on you. I'm not whatever. I didn't try any of that."
Pervert!
I was just like, yeah, I'll, because I understood like how much shit they were having to take on the road. It was like, fuck.
It's just like for me, as a girl dad, where my daughter played soccer for a long time, and some of the practices would end in the evening or get closer to nighttime, and it started getting dark. And so like I would always wait, make sure the last girl, some of the coaches would too, almost all the coaches pretty much wait until the last girl left, or was with her parents, because some of the parents, would drop off, come back, or, was working and would pick them up after. But then it's funny because the rule I always had was, I'll give them a ride, no problem. My daughter just has to be in the car. It's like, it's kind of like you're protecting yourself, and also,
yeah, for sure.
So that the parents don't get worried, "Oh, what happened? What did he do?" or anything like that. So, and it's I guess a funny story where sometimes after school, we're from driving, to go pick up my daughter, and I see some of her friends or a friend of hers. I'll wave and say, but I won't pick them up if they're walking home or something. "Oh, sorry, I don't have Tyler with me, so can't pick you up.
Yeah.
I hope you get there." It's like, it's weird. I mean, you get it, what I'm saying, but it's like,
I totally get it.
yeah. So, but yeah, it for me being a girl dad, it changed where it's like, oh, I gotta, I think of, it's different for being in this industry and working with promoters and bar club owners, knowing that it's a lot of times it's different for the female comics or the female employee or whatever is that, maybe not consciously, but something. They're treating us different than they are. So I get it.
Mhm.
That's my point, I guess. What I'm saying. So you're in your career on the road. I haven't been on the road yet. Technically, I've done what do you call shows in the States, but I wasn't like the star of the show. But anyways, you got to have seen some crazy things on the road. Like, you don't have to do all of them, but I'm pretty sure. So I've heard some of your stories. You don't have to do like but like one of the things, I guess, a comic that here in Hawaii that eventually start getting on the road could expect to see something crazy that you've seen.
Oh boy, it's hard to narrow down.
Off the top of your head, I'm sure there's one that sticks there. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Well, there was. I mean, when I was younger, in my 20s, it'd be like, well, let's go out after the show, and so that,
But don't shoot yourself in the foot now. don't tell us something that I shouldn't have did that, but I did that. No, be careful.
There's like you got in some of these small towns, and this someone from the show or the wait staff will be like, oh, we're all gonna go to this bar, which is fine sometimes, or like we're gonna go to this party. And I remember like in Michigan, in the middle of nowhere, driving around, like I'm like, what the fuck? Where is this party? And I was just like, ended up. And I was a little, this is back when I used to drink, and I was like in the middle of the woods. It was like some small town in Michigan. So it was like outside of this small town. And we're in the woods in Michigan. And I'm just like, and we go to end up, and they're like, oh, we stop at some house. We're at some house in the woods, and and I like followed this people there. And I'm like, where the fuck are we?
You can't even get away if you try to.
I know. I was like, this is awful. Like I'm really feeling like they're going to eat me out here. Like, this is like, I think literally like Jeffrey Dahmer, like just got busted. It was like, ooh. And so we go into some house, and there's this like, it's some shitty house in the middle of nowhere.
Ugh.
And there's some like drunk guy on the couch. And then the girl's in the kitchen with some guy. So I didn't drive her there. I followed her car there, and I thought it was be like, oh, a party. And it was like, oh, here's the comedian from the club. Oh, there's like 3 guys there, and 2 of them are passed out.
Ugh.
It's like 1 or 2 in the morning. She's in the kitchen, and I hear this like, who's this fucking guy? I'm hearing that. And I'm like, oh man. And I'm sitting on the couch.
You can just tell by the tone that guy wants to kick my ass.
I'm just like, this guy does not want me here. And their date, like, who am I? Who's this? He doesn't know me.
Oh, snap.
And I hear her say something like, oh, he didn't, like, she's kind of like shit talking me. Maybe just save her ass. I don't know what.
And I'm the only comedian on the road.
It's some idiot comic and it was like not even a good gig. It was like a restaurant that had like a bar in the basement. It was like Livonia, Michigan, like in the middle of nowhere.
Jeez.
Some shitty bar gig where they like, they give you like half price dinner. Like they didn't give you a free full dinner. Like some shitty, right? Like, come on.
Some game show host that followed me here.
I was not a game show host at that point. I was a middle act. I was like a 24-year-old middle act. So I had no juice at all. And because if I would have been on TV at that point, A, I wouldn't have been doing Livonia, Michigan, and B, I wouldn't have ended up in this house. And had I ended up in this house, it would have been like, hey, the guy from TV's here. Hey, like it would have been different. Instead, just like, who's this bug? Who's this bug? And she's sitting there talking, and I'm looking at these like drunk guys passed out on the couch, and I'm like, all right, I got to get out of here. And when I heard her shit talking to me, her purse was on the couch, so I pulled $20 bills out of her purse.
Yes. Success.
And I was like, I got in the car, and again, this is pre-smartphone. I really want the young people to understand this. This is like I couldn't just hit the hotel address. I had to figure the fuck where I had to get back into town, remember the street I was where the Motel 6 was or wherever we were staying at. Like, Sheesh. It was like, and I'm amazed I wasn't murdered and eaten. You know what I mean?
You might have escaped. That's what happened. And you escaped with money.
And so the next day, I was on the road with this comic Brian Noonan, who's another great guy from Chicago, and he was married, so he was like, he went to bed early every night. And the next day, because we were driving to the next town or something like that, and I said, I go, lunch is on me. I told him the whole story, and he's like laughing hysterically. And I go, I got lunch, and I pulled out the $20 bill, and we went to McDonald's or something, and I bought lunch with my stolen.
That's funny
Didn't
because
get
they would
rid
have been like,
of
"Who the fuck is this guy?" And she's like, "Oh, he's some jerk. I think he's a comedian. He's a performer. So he probably got a lot of money. So I brought him here so we can rob his ass." And
Yeah, so exactly. Like,
and
we're
then they
gonna
open
roll
the
him.
door and you jack them, and it's like, and then and then and years later, fast forward, they're watching strip poker, and they're like, "Isn't that guy?" It's like, that
That's the guy
jacked
that stole
us.
$20 out of your wallet.
Oh, that's that dude. See, I told you, don't bring these strangers home. See,
What
Cal
happened?
Jackson. Bad road stories turn into the best stories when sharing with other comics when you try topping each
Oh
other.
yes, I could listen to and tell bad road stories forever. It's my favorite thing to do with comics. And like when I go on the road with Ron Placone, we've been, our tours, we were touring 2018, 2019, and then at the beginning of 2020. So we really haven't much. We've done a couple of shows. We had all these tours canceled because of COVID, but he and I would drive on the road, and Ron was like a road dog, like lived in his car for a couple of
Wow.
years, road dog. And we had just some hilarious story. I love hearing road comics telling awful stories. I could tell them all night, and I could hear them all night.
There should be a whole podcast of just asking road comics what happened that night, and they just share their worst stories. But
Well, that was Murray Valeriano did that show. He did a podcast called Road Stories, where this is what you would do. You would
I'm gonna have to
come
look
on,
that
and
up.
it's a great podcast. I don't think he
Yeah.
does it anymore. Now he does a music one, but yeah, I did Murray's Road Stories like years ago.
Nice. So, like, I guess another question I had for you is, if you could go back and change something in your career, your stand-up career, obviously social media would be something that if you were able to conquer the algorithm, because I know you and myself were always trying to, you know, figure out TikTok, but we're just like, you know what, fuck TikTok. But and that's where I'm at now. I'm just like, my sister asked me today, "You're not making any more TikToks?" I'm like, man, fuck TikTok. IG Reels for me. But if you could go back and make some changes, like, what would you like? Whether it's one or a few, or maybe you wouldn't have robbed that girl, or
I
or
don't
even
regret that at all.
followed her home, because that's a long way to make make $20. You know what I mean? It's like, we went 5 hours into the woods. Could have ran into Leatherface, but no, I came away with $20. So I win, but I paid $30 worth of gas. So
I
McDonald's is on me.
I I mean, God, I wish when I did the game shows, like MySpace was pumping. I like those shows happened. They began and ended right before Friendster and MySpace blew up, and then so God, if I would have been doing, if Twitter or anything would have been around when I was doing strip poker, that would have blown up. So I mean, I obviously can't change that timeline. I will say this: I was just thinking about this the other day when I was doing strip poker. And I'd gone to this like intense acting school, Playhouse West, that they trained you in Meisner when I got to LA, and like Jeff Goldblum was one of the instructors, and
Wow.
Ashley Judd and James Franco came out of that school. It was a really like prestigious, and I wanted to be this serious actor and be a stand-up comic. So when strip poker happened, I sunk some of my money into making this short film called Hello Junkie, which was based on this character called Detective Stryker. It was like a parody of 70s cop shows, because I grew up watching those 70s cop shows, like Hawaii Five-O and Mannix and Streets of San Francisco and all those shows.
I love watching Hawaii Five-O, the original Hawaii Five-O today.
It's great.
And yeah, I mean, Jack Lord was McGarrett. He's like, he was the mafia or something. Like, whatever he wanted to do was going to get done. and nobody could stop him.
Ever. He
Yeah.
had jurisdiction over everything. I mean, I love that show, the old school one. He would just pick up any phone on the island and say, patch me through. And it was like done. Like he didn't have to even say this is McGarry, just go patch me through. And they would just like done.
There was
like,
no like listen for dial tone. It was just boom. The carrot's on. Patch him immediately. And the funniest one thing I remember seeing, it was my daughter. She was maybe like 8 years old, 10 years old at the time, and the scene is that they're showing a doctor who picks up a phone and is telling them about how the autopsy went, and he's in the hospital. Oh yeah, so the cause of death. Next thing you know, his cigarette comes up to his mouth, and he's smoking, and it's just like, Dad, he's smoking inside. I was like, I'm tripping that he's smoking in the hospital.
That was the 70s where you could smoke anywhere. You could smoke at like a prenatal ward. Just sit there. The doctor would be smoking. I mean, dude, the old school Hawaii Five-0, I love that. That show molded my life. I mean, it was the only night of the week I could stay up past my bedtime was to watch it on Thursday nights because it was on from 8 to 9. I was just thinking about that today. I was driving back from, I did this beach cleanup for Surfrider in Eva Beach. And I was driving back, through Pearl and downtown. And I was like, my first like entry into Oahu was the seedy criminal underbelly. Like that's from watching that show. The show was like cool to be surfing and there'd be pretty girls and stuff like that. But I was like, Hawaii must just be like, it is just crime central. Because if you think about that show, they weren't doing like pickpockets in Waikiki. It was like heavy crime. There was like just murder and all like throwing people. Like it was nuts, man.
And they had a James Bond villain on there, so that's why I was like, what was his name?
Wo Fat.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, whoa, that's the guy. It's like the what do you call the antagonist for with against McGarrett, where it's like. McGarrett is so awesome that we need a villain opposite from him who is amazing too. Yeah. And it was like, that's what we're watching. We're watching James Bond in Hawaii in a series. And I loved it. I loved watching it with my dad because he hated the Hawaii Five-0, the new one, because my dad's old school and he loved the original. Mm-hmm. And then when McGarrett and Dano would have arguments in the new one. My dad was like, why is he talking back to McGarrett?
Yeah. Like, oh God. Can you imagine anyone talking back to Jack Lord? Like,
dude, you're done. You're done.
You're
off
done.
The island. I mean, you're out of the state.
Well, that series was so great because in the first couple of seasons, they had a lounge singer, God, what was his name? An actual Hawaiian lounge singer that played
Don Ho?
Not Don Ho. It was the first couple of seasons. Oh man, what was his name?
Oh, he had the glasses.
No.
Okay, I don't know because I'm picturing has the glasses.
It was
Jimmy Borges is who I'm picturing.
Yeah, you're thinking of Jimmy Borges, yeah.
Yeah.
But and his name was...
Who I've met, by the way, and said I was funny.
Oh,
Kaboom.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so thank you, Kehal put that there, so I appreciate it.
Nice. Yeah. Kehal. All right, this is going to drive me crazy. I got to look this up right now.
Kehal also says, typical Hawaii, he was named after a restaurant. Yes, Wo Fat was named after a restaurant. Average Girly, going through the crazy comedy crew over here with the comments. Average Girly Girl says, I thought I was the only one that remembers Friendster. This is while Graham looks up that thing. Let's see. Average Husband. Well, Average Girly and Average Husband. I wonder if they need to meet each other. Well, he's already a husband. So, ask, what are open mics like in Hawaii? They're pretty chill. I would ask Graham to compare it to open mics up in the
Zulu.
States. Zulu?
Zulu is played by a guy named Kono. No. Zulu played this guy Kono. Zulu was a lounge act.
Oh, he was
Yeah, in Hawaii.
like in his like the actor
The
was
actor
a
was a legitimate lounge act, and
ah,
he was in the first 2 seasons, I think, or 3 seasons. And the story goes, he would stay out late and sing, and Jack Lord ran the show with an iron fist
right
and had him tossed, and he was mad.
because he was working out late.
Yep, he was out late,
Wow.
and so he was resentful at Jack Lord. Because I know this because I went to the first and only ever Hawaii Five-0 convention at the Burbank Airport Hilton in like 1997. And I
Wow.
met Cam Fong and James MacArthur, who played Dano
Dano.
and Chin Ho.
Wow.
Yeah, I met Dano. I met James MacArthur twice. And yeah, that show was awesome. I don't remember what the original question you asked me, but now we're just talking about Hawaii Five-0. But yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah,
Yes,
that oh, okay. Interesting. Interesting things learning today. That was a whole Polynesian looking guy.
yes,
Zulu. Ah, see, I remember him, and I remember I like so as I watched him watch Hawaii Five O. It's one of those where if it's on, you're gonna watch it. So like
yeah,
when I was up in Buffalo, New York, going to college, and I remember seeing it, watch it, talking trash about him. Not personally, like I don't know the guy personally, but just like, oh look, how's this Hawaiian guy? Just he's always running. He's the guy that has to go and chase the people to get him, and his hair would always be a little bit messy because, back then everybody had a lot of hair. So it's always that scene where the hair is messy, and all of a sudden they caught the guy and they beat him up, and then you go back and the hair is fine. It's like,
perfect.
especially Jack Lord's hair. Yeah, I
Jack
remember that
Lord.
guy. I just looked him
Oh.
up. Yeah, I remember that dude.
And
So
he would always call in the show. He'd go, "Hey, boss." When Zulu would come on, he'd call McGarrett boss. Hey, boss, we got the guy, boss. Like he was like super local.
yeah. So, but Jack Lord didn't understand that brown people need about 4 or 5 jobs to stay ahead in Hawaii. So that's what he was doing. He was like, I ain't getting Jack Lord money. I got a voice. I'm going to go sing. Give me that ukulele. And he was like, tiny bubbles. And then he ruined his career, Jack Lord did. He could have been the next Don Ho. How dare he?
I know. And they always had a lot of singers and lounge acts on the show.
Jimmy
Like,
Borges.
mhm.
For me, yeah. So that's why I was like, yeah, the guy from Hawaii Five-0. But they always had a guest actor, like who was like a movie star or something. That was it.
Yeah. Well, they had they had Shatner on several times. They had like a young Martin Sheen. They had a lot of great guest stars on. I mean, it was just like, and they had some heavy subjects, man. Then one time, Yaphet Kotto paid a Vietnam vet that was having, well, they didn't call it back then, but having PTSD and was killing people.
Oh, and this was before PTSD was named.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know Yvonne Elliman was on there? I don't know
wow.
who that is. I don't know who Yvonne Elliman is.
Who's the other Mane?
So I'm James Mane, and that's another Mane. So it's a person I know.
Okay.
But let's go. This is here. Average husband would like to know what are open mics like in Hawaii. So I cannot compare it to the States. Are the crowds better because you have tourists? I cannot compare it to the States. You have been to open mics up in the States. For me, open mics here, you won't really have tourists there. If they're there, they accidentally got into that place, or because we do have showcases. Most of our shows are showcases. People might say it's a headline or whatever. It's technically a showcase, and they highlight some of the local talent. The thing with here is, our open mics can be like I guess like coffee shops or a pizza parlor. It can be pretty. I don't want to say ghetto, but you know what I mean. Like it's not we don't have an official comedy club, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's no official comedy club here. So the open mics actually are not that bad. I mean, like LA, has the widest range of venues, like the best in the clubs in the world, and then the worst open mics, like horrible. Like the open mics here are actually pretty good in the sense that I when I first got here, I did several of them because I hadn't been on stage in 16 months and I needed to like work stuff out, and they were actually okay. Like I could try new stuff. There was a decent semblance of a crowd. That was kind of enough listening. It wasn't just all comics. Um, there's some people that just showed up. I mean, but like you touched on it, the comics here I think are very fortunate because there's not a lot of comics that you can do these showcases, and like you get a lot, in your first year or two of doing stand up, it is rare to get like 15-20 minute sets.
Right.
I mean, it's rare to, I mean, in LA and other big cities, you're getting 3 minutes, 4 minutes, like 10 minutes if you're lucky, where the comics here are getting to do longer sets, which is like, it's pretty productive. But there isn't a full-time club here. The best club here is the Blue Note, which is a great club. I'm actually going to be there Wednesday night. And yes, but the couple clubs, the open mics that I've done, I was kind of cool to do, and just to get back in the open mics and like shake the rust off and everything. And I think,
Yeah, Blue Note's one of my favorites. In fact, there's a show there on February 2nd.
yes,
If you look at your screen, the head of insecurity with James Monday, February 2nd, you can get your tickets at BlueNoteHawaii.com. You can also get tickets to the show that Graham's going to be in this coming Wednesday, correct?
yep.
Yeah. So or is that Slacky? Did we just give the wrong? Go to comedyuhi.com and you can see a lot of the local shows. Also open mics. They put out a lot of these shows where people can go. It's funny because I've been at some of the showcases that they let us pop in to do sets and work on new material. And I've bumped into comics from New York, Long Island, in fact, and then another one was from LA. And they're like, do comics here normally get 15 minutes? I was like, some get 20. They're like, really? I was like, well, where are you from? And they're like, oh, I was doing, what do you call, open door or outdoor event in Long Island in somebody's backyard. And I got 5 minutes. I was like, wow. Well, welcome to Hawaii. This is how we do it. You get more than that.
Yeah. And it's a pretty supportive community. That's the other thing. Any comics that are just in town on vacation or whatever here can probably get on stage pretty easily. And it's a pretty supportive thing. I mean, that's the thing I really liked here about that.
Let's get into podcasting. That's so, like I said in the beginning, where you motivated me or inspired me to start doing podcasting, get on live. You helped me with the technical stuff to get started. And it's funny because before doing the first episode, I was like, I don't know. I got to do this. I got to do this. And you keep saying, you just got to just do it, man. Just go and mess up and learn from it. And as well as, the guys I did, guys with issues with for years. And they were saying the same thing. Is like, so if you mess up, what's the worst that can happen? It's like nothing. You learn from it and just keep going. So Chad Walgo and Russell Kello is always pushing as well. I was like, just go and do it. And now that I've done, 2 episodes and I have a schedule, I was like, I'm going to do Monday and Thursdays live. And then here we are Saturday. I'm like, hey, you want to do a live? And then there's somebody else that can't do it Monday. I'm like, we'll do that, whatever night you got. It's almost, because you go live in Political Vigilante almost as often as you like. Like if you wake up and say, I want to talk about this. And then you go live and you do it.
Yeah. And I think that's the amazing thing in this digital era. So, and again, like because I've been doing stand up so long, I can tell, I came up at a time where, there was no internet, there was no social media, and you had to send VHS tapes around, and you had to just crush on stage. You had to crush on stage, and then you had to move to LA or New York to get somebody in show business to put you on TV, and you had to do late night TV or you get on the Tonight Show. Like you had to get all of these, and all that stuff still exists. I mean, you can still go to Hollywood and audition and do all that. But there was just all these gatekeepers, and then the technology the last 10 years or so more like 12, 13. I don't know. I mean, they've been podcasting probably for 15 years now, but like, the last 10 years or so, since 08, 09, when social media started to hit 15 years ago, you can create your own thing and do it your way. And it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And, you got to fight stuff like algorithms and all. There's all this content out there, but you can create your own thing and you can just do it. This isn't network TV. So if you screw this up, okay, so what? Just do another episode, learn from it, make the mistake, fix the sound or whatever the issue, you know what I mean? Just buy a better mic or what, like this is my studio for Political Vigilante. I started doing that show January 2nd, 2017. And I just talked into my iPhone, reading the newspaper at my kitchen table. Right.
And I remember you doing that and telling me, hey, you should start this and you should do this. And then I'm like, yeah. Now I'm looking at you. I'm like, man, he was able to move from LA to Hawaii, and now he's doing his podcast. And then this is what you do pretty much for a living. I mean, this is your career. This is Graham Elwood, and like you're not struggling. I mean, like you're not like when you were doing the road, you're out. You're on the road all the time. You're out, like you're going into the woods with some stranger,
stealing money from McDonald's the next day.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like that's to me, that's the struggle. You're out on the grind. Where now, you wake up and you're like, let me see what I can create. And I think that's what I like the most is the creative side, where so we like to write jokes, and now it's like, whoa, this is creating as well. I can create this, and I can talk about that.
You can go talk to anybody you want. Like if you get a hold of them, and I've asked a million people to come on my show, and I didn't hear from them or whatever because they're too big or I don't know them. But I've also just I just reached out to somebody on social media and said, hey, do you want to come on my show? I have this YouTube channel with about 76,000 subscribers. Like, come check it out. And someone like, yeah,
I got three.
And it's, well, that's the thing. I had, I don't know, 164 subscribers when I started doing my YouTube channel, because I had just been putting stand-up clips. I wasn't really doing anything with it. And I've grown it, and that's with YouTube suppressing me and all this algorithm nonsense I've had to fight, and because I talk politics, so they get really touchy on all this shit. So you can do anything. And, having done, Chris Mancini and I did Comedy Film Nerds for 10 years. We did over 600 episodes. And, Dave Anthony and Chris and myself, it was Dave Anthony's idea to start the LA Podcast Festival. And the three of us did that for 6 years, and really seeing how anything is possible. I mean, just anything. I mean, you talked me into doing TikTok, and I was like, all right. And I had 50 followers and 9 videos on there. And then one of them went viral, and it's got 4.1 million views, and I got 31,000 followers now. And you and I are still talking like, TikTok, it's hard to figure out. You can't deviate from this niche in TikTok, but it's still a potential. And even though right now you and I might be like frustrated, we can just go back and start doing it anyway. Like, we can just do it. And it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of trial and error. But for me, as somebody that came up in traditional show business, I prefer this, because every hour of time I put into this podcasting, YouTube, TikTok, I see a result. I can get something from it. Whereas I've done that traditional show. I've pitched it and had some executive love that I've in movies and TV shows, and then they get fired or they leave or just something. And I'm just like, there's nothing to show for it. Where here, even like TikTok videos I've put up that haven't gotten a lot of views, it's not a waste. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't detract from what I'm doing. And that's the thing I've been talking to you, about. Just do it. You're funny. You're really good at what you do. You have a perspective that, again, like, I don't know any other 6-7 Samoan comedians. I just, so like you have a point of view. You're a very funny guy. I didn't put you in that TV show for like a charity thing. I put you in there because you were good. Like you weren't going to make me look bad, because if you would have sucked, it would have made me look bad.
Right.
So like,
And Samoans. But
and Samoans.
let's
And
settle down on the. I don't know if you're like me, where if you start giving me compliments, I don't know how to take it. I'm like, whoa, hey, take it easy.
well, all right. Yeah.
Settle down. Let's talk about something else now. I don't think even after shows, which is why a lot of times I don't go and right after the show, like especially I open for Tumor, and he's like, "Oh, let's go and take pictures of the people," and I'm like, Partly it's not my show. I'm support. It's his show. It's his fans. Yada yada. But the other part, which is like, people are gonna say, "Oh, you were funny and you were this," and I'm just like, I don't like this. I don't know. That's the weird part of me.
James, you need to get over that. I'll tell you that right now. This is your big brother Graham talking, because it's like that's marketing. Because now with social media, taking pictures of comedians and hey, follow me and tag me on Instagram. That's followers that can then translate into ticket buyers.
Right.
For this show you've got coming up in February.
All right. So, I listened to you finally with the podcast idea. I'm going to do this one sooner. So the show on February 2nd, I'll go and take pictures. I am boosted, so
yeah,
I'll be all right, I think. But who used to do it really good, and this is like 10 years ago. This is before TikTok, and I think Instagram was fairly new. Was Steve-O. So he would do his show. I opened for him at Hawaiian Brian's before they made actual rooms, and he would say, "Oh, I want to take picture with everybody here tonight." Everybody's like, "Yeah." He's bleeding. He just lit himself on fire, and and then they're like, "Yeah, we'll take pictures with Steve-O." Is it the only thing I ask is that you tag me on all of your pictures and follow me on Instagram. And so he has a huge following because that people would take the picture. I took a picture with Steve. Of course, this was pre-pandemic. So yeah, he stayed up for maybe an hour. There was a line. Nobody left. Maybe like a handful of people left, but everybody waited to get that picture with this guy with blood all over himself. And then went home, posted it, and tagged him. So like when we did like maybe like 8 years ago, whatever, like a Google search and see who got a lot of hits. His website got tons of hits because everybody would, and I was like, man, that was clever.
That's what you got to do, man. That's what the road and live shows are about, is converting people to, social media, you convert them to ticket buyers and they come to a live show, and you convert them to like lifetime fans,
right?
Who are like always following you on social media, always want to come to your next show, buy your new album or whatever. Like that's you got to look at the business. This is a business. It's called show business, and standing on stage telling jokes is the greatest thing you get to do in the world. And so you got to play all the other marketing and business side stuff so you can stay in the circus.
Right. Stay in the circus.
We all just don't want summer break to end. Like it's just a never ending summer break. We're all on, we just don't want to go back to school. So
yeah, I mean, it's something that a lot, that's the thing with stand-up comedy is like, so like people that get bored with their lives, stand-up comedy has a lot of challenges, internal challenges. And for me, when I first started, I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want anybody I knew to see me perform. And then eventually friends saw me perform. I was like, all right, I'm the one that had the problem, not my friends. Then it was family. Then it was someone. I always had a wall that I had to get past because I set that up in my own, my own head, my own thinking. Where it's like, no, I'll probably suck in front of Samoans. They're gonna find out I don't speak the language, and then I suck, and I'm not a real Samoan. And then eventually, over time, broke all those barriers. Even performing in the States, I was like, oh, they're not gonna get me. And then when I did it, I was like, that was just me stopping me. So I had to get out of my own way, and and here I am doing the podcast finally.
And it's great, dude. You got people watching, you're live streaming, and there's nowhere but to go up. It's just it's a great thing. You figured out StreamYard, like this can grow. The other thing is just you gotta and I get caught sometimes like, oh, I think it needs to be this, or I want it in like this. It's and you gotta let go of that and just go, this can be whatever. It can grow into something I never even
Right.
dude, I wasn't sitting around going, I'm going to direct a Native American TV series. Like that would never entered my mind. And then my friend called me up out of nowhere. We had a lunch in like April of 2017, and I pitched him all these ideas. He goes, yeah, let me see. We're trying to get the funding. I was like, okay, cool. And I forgot about it because not that I think my friend was like running a scam, but that's show business. You pitch ideas and you talk stuff, and then it goes or it doesn't, and you forget about it. And then like 4 months later, he called me up in August and was like, hey, it's done. And I was like, what's done? He's like, the series, we got the money. But boom, I'm sending over contract. I was like, huh? What? And then here we go. So anything's possible. I mean, you talked me into TikTok, and
I'm not proud of it. It's so funny because I was like, I talked him into TikTok. He got 4 million views on one of them. I'm still around 200.
but we can still go back to making sketches and doing stuff and trying different stuff on TikTok, and maybe it won't work. Maybe we need to change, who knows?
Well, Omicron really put the kibosh on a lot of plans that we had as far as working together as a group. But thankfully, so this right here, the podcast, I mean, we're safe. You're in your studio. I'm in my studio, and and then we can have other guests. Like even on your podcast, Political Vigilante, you actually play a game, and that was part of that. So it seems like that game should coming back full circle.
Well, that's
your
another
game
great
show
example.
host at heart, my friend.
That's what I love. I want to make movies and host game shows and do stand up. Like that's what I want to do. So I'm figuring out how do I do that. And that's the other thing, like doing my YouTube show, Political Vigilante, and I do these interviews and talk about this serious stuff. And then I was like, I want to do a game show. I want to do a political game show. So I just started doing it, and you've been on it, and it's been cool. And I'm going to hopefully raise money using NFTs to fund it. Like anything's possible, dude. I mean, and when you
I won that episode I was in. Surprisingly, against someone who knows more about politics.
She's a lawyer. She's a political lawyer. Like she's really whip smart, and you figured out a way to win. That was amazing. That's what the thing was so fun. And like, yeah, anything's possible. I mean, I just said I want to grow my YouTube show so I can spend my winters in Hawaii. That was my goal 2-3 years ago.
Boom.
And like you say, there's challenges. It's up and down. It's not like, I'm not like Joe Rogan getting $100 million contracts with Spotify, but like,
because you got to make up a better story. So.
Yeah,
you got to make things up and then challenge, science and just like Homer Simpson mentality, just no thought and just challenge everybody. You go, what? It's got to be fake, and no, it can't be real. Follow me, everyone, minions and. Yeah. Hey, look, Tyler's watching. Hi, Tyler.
What's up, Tyler?
That's about it. Now go sleep. It's late. Always a dad. Always.
Is she back in Wyoming?
No, not yet. She's leaving tomorrow, so tomorrow will be a very sad day for me.
Oh, I'm sorry, buddy.
But it's funny, though, because, and this is real talk, comedians, we do real talk. So it's like, go already because you're holding. Yeah, it's like go already because you're holding me up. I'm trying to do some podcasting, and look, her boyfriend is saying hello as well. So hey, Jordan, it's late. Go home. But yeah, she leaves. She goes back tomorrow. It's good and bad because of course I'm going to miss her, but. Good because I can get to work full go and not worry about, I can, what is she doing? Where is she? She's safe and just, go college, go play volleyball. And Daddy's going to do this comedy thing and try to get famous with this podcast. But yeah, we'll see.
Other Mane, that's one of your sisters?
That's my sister. Yep.
Because she's
So,
calling you Jimmy. I've never heard anybody call you Jimmy except your sisters.
so for the scammers that watch the show, only family call me Jimmy. So nobody's calling me. If I hear Jimmy, then I'm like, oh, it's family. Jimmy or Jimmy boy, because I'm the youngest. So they give you that, that little hey
Yeah,
punk
yeah.
name. So I was Jimmy. So that's why you say Jimbo Maine.
Jimbo Maine.
It's like, yeah, I like that. So only person calling me that is you. I associate with just this person. But what do you got coming up next? Actually, people, if you want to check out the Graham's podcast, Political Vigilante, you can go to YouTube or you can go to Graham Elwood's website, grahamelwood.com. That's one L, yeah, grahamelwood.com. And you can see where he's going to be appearing, his podcast. You guys still have Comedy Film Nerd episodes that people can listen to, or is it all gone?
Yeah, they're all still. We did 600 episodes. If you want to hear us talk about a million different movies, go to Comedy Film Nerds. It's still on iTunes, I think, and Spotify. You can listen to old episodes. There's an episode you were on that we recorded actually live in Hawaiian Brian's in the old room that's now Slack Key. And that's a really cool, fun episode. And then, you can listen to my other podcast that I've been doing recently, Government Secrets with Lee Camp, where we just reveal all of the evil crap that America's done over the years.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
America's done evil?
It's going to catch you off guard, buddy. It's
As a person who's raised in the 50th state of Hawaii, I cannot believe that the United States have done some evil.
I know. It's weird when you live in a state that was actually stolen illegally in 1893.
Wait a minute. When the Queen signed off the land and gave it willingly to the man
who was with the guys with bayonets, I thought that was all above board. I thought that was
She said, nice army, nice swords and rifles. Let me just give this to you.
Here you go.
Yeah, you guys came a long way. I might as well just give it to you.
You guys came all this way. We might as well just sign over our sovereignty to you. That's
Polynesians for you, man. I mean, you've seen us in the movies. Your boats come down, and we're like, what is that? Let's swim out to it and welcome them to our land. Yeah, that sounds right.
So, yeah, you can check out all my shows, Government Secrets, the Anything Can Happen game show that James has been on. All that's on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Graham Elwood, or you can just go to grahamelwood.com. If you're in Waikiki this Wednesday, come by the Blue Note. And hopefully, this is my first show in like 6 weeks because of Omicron. So hopefully, as Omicron hopefully starts to fade, I'll be back doing more shows on Oahu, and I'm going to be setting up some tours on the mainland. And then Ron Placone and I are going to hopefully take our political comedy tour to Europe in the summer.
Yes, I have a friend in Germany that is dying to see you guys. So
yes,
hopefully you get to make it there, or he gets to go to the show wherever you're at in Europe.
Yes.
I do want to, I want to recognize that you have performed for our troops overseas, which is, to me, that's like one of my dreams. Of course, obviously I can't perform in Afghanistan anymore because, that whole shenanigans that happened there. But you have. You actually have a movie, documentary,
yeah,
Afghanistan comedy Downrange, which was in 2009.
Yep, it's a feature-length documentary. You can just see me performing at all these fire bases in Afghanistan. You can watch it. It was available on Amazon. Actually, if you go to rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, that's a YouTube competitor that all my videos are also on, and it's blockchain, and they pay us in cryptocurrency. And yeah, I went to Afghanistan 3 times and Iraq 3 times, and Kuwait. I did 7 comedy tours in war zones between 2004 and 2012. And it was a really amazing, life-changing experience. And there's a lot of really great comedians that went over there to entertain people in the war zones. And there still are. It was
eye-opening for you because there's a scene in there that struck a chord with me, like the scene where you were like really afraid for your life, and and when I seen it, I was like, oh my goodness, that's a person. We're watching a person, you, who thinks that your life is gonna end right there. Like, and there's nothing you can do. You can't. It's not like like a kid is like, oh, I'll just cover myself with this blanket, I'll be all right. Or I want mommy. The tone from your voice was kind of like that. Like, I want my mom. Like, I want out of here, like, now. But you were just in getting attacked, and I was like, holy crap. And
Yeah.
that's when I was like, wow, that inspired me. I was like, one day if I have the if I'm blessed where they say, hey, we'd like you to perform for the troops, of course I'd do it. Obviously, I probably wouldn't fit in the Black Hawk. They might have to ship me over 6 to 8 weeks. I'll be there. But with the backlog in California, it's shipping, so it
Yeah.
might take me a little bit longer. And then if they don't rob the train that I'm riding, and who knows how long, but provide for the troops. Whether you're for war or not, these are young men who are helping protect our lives.
Yeah, it's young men and women. I mean,
Yeah,
we have
sorry,
an all
young men.
volunteer military, and
Yeah,
they're that was the one of the points of the movie I was trying to make, was just like, it's being in a war zone through the eyes of a comedian, but I wanted people to see, like, if I'm feeling this way, going there to tell jokes for 2 weeks, and I'm scared and terrified, what do you think they're doing if they're there for a 12-month deployment?
right.
And it was
And
like,
they're at the front. They're at the
they're in the
front.
front. Yeah, they're not telling
You're in
jokes
the
from the back. Like,
yeah.
they're up, they're going on maneuvers. They're going on search and destroy missions and stuff like that. And so, and then also, I remember my family was always super freaked out when I would go over there, and I would tell them, I'd say, I'm not minimizing how you're feeling, but think about if I was on a 12-month deployment, and not only just being there for 12 months in some base, but let's say if I was in infantry, I was doing combat for
Right.
12 months. I mean, that's like, and you got to see war. I got to see it up close. That's why I'm very anti-war. I'm just, because I've seen it up close, and I respect the young men and women that sign up for this really tough job.
Yeah.
And
Because
I
one
mean,
thing that people can't, like, I felt your emotion as you're talking to the camera. I felt that, and I was like, that hit me really hard. But the one thing that I believe you guys are talking about, that we wouldn't be able to really feel, is not just the sounds and seeing the being attacked, but also the smells, where what happens with the bodies. Oh, they go stack them over there, and they burn, or whatever. It's like we don't, or even the smell of a dead body, or we don't see that. And my cousin, who's done tons of tours with the Army, like, I think he got in like maybe 10 years ago, and he came back after his second tour, and I was asking him, hey, welcome home. So what is it like? Real ignorant person. What is it like? Did you see trees and birds? And what was? But as it was, and he just said, oh, I don't want to talk about it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, all right, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. And then he goes, I see ghosts all the time.
oh,
And then he just walked away from me, and I was like, shit, this is something that my stupid ass will never get. But that's what's happening with our young men and women in uniform over there, So,
yeah, I mean, it's the movie captures like but I mean, I have hours and hours of footage that, from even just the other trips I did to Iraq, that are just like in a box somewhere, and I feel like I don't know what to do with them, but I saw so much stuff. And again, it changed me forever. And it all just, I mean, it pales in comparison to what, like, somebody like your cousin went through.
mm-hmm.
That's the thing I always remember. Like if and I think just about every comic I knew that went over there, we all would come to the same conclusion. If I'm feeling this way for going
Right.
over there and telling jokes, imagine what, again, somebody like your cousin who was there for a year, did a full deployment, or was in the infantry or whatever.
Mm.
And it really, it was such a big, impactful part of my life, that, yeah, I mean, I remember even coming to this island and doing shows. And then with Patrick Terrell, we did some fundraisers for, I think
Wounded
disabled
Warrior.
Wounded Warrior. Yeah, that's right. And we went to the Marine base and everything.
And you saw a beach on a Marine base, and you were like, "What?"
Yeah. Yeah. The beach that you're like, no one's allowed to get to unless you're a Marine or whatever. Like,
And it was a beautiful beach too. The
Beautiful.
Connery Marine Corps base headquarters.
Yep. And so it was like, yeah. And then, flying around Afghanistan and Iraq in Black Hawk helicopters and stuff, like I've seen stuff most people will never see.
Right.
It's like images that are in my head forever. And sounds, and like I don't like loud noises. Like I get jumpy when I hear loud noises, because there was some rocket attacks and some gunfire and stuff that I witnessed and stuff. So,
Well, lucky you live in a city.
yeah. Yeah.
We heard 2 police cars pass by as we're podcasting. So, and
Yeah.
It's not on my end.
No, it's definitely Waikiki, baby. Waikiki never sleeps. It's the tropical Manhattan is what it is.
And pretty much, because it's on an island too, and then the noise just echoes upwards. Where my neighborhood's pretty quiet. Who'd have thunk? Who'd have thunk? The white guy lives in a noisy police siren neighborhood, where I'm over in the suburbs. Like, yeah, I'll go for a walk at 11 at night. Be safe.
When I moved to Chicago when I was like 11 from Wisconsin, I just became a city kid, and sirens and crime. I just feel more at home. It's easy for me to live in that than it was when I was on Kauai.
Oh man! Oh, good, nice 2-hour episode. So
Boom.
that's how we do. We plan for an hour, and we give you double. We said, "Oh, about an hour." That's so funny, because we're talking. I'm like, man, we didn't even get through all of our stuff, and we're like already at 35 minutes. And I was like, we'll go as long as the people are listening. So we appreciate you guys. Sorry to bring it down. I don't know if we can bring it back. I think this is good. We talked about comedy, and we brought it down to like where the heart is, and where real life is, and if you guys want to go follow people in the woods or not. And
well, I'll tell you. I mean, going overseas as a comedian was one of the most like rewarding things I've done as a comedian. Just it wasn't as a person, and it really showed to me the value of comedy. Prior to that, I was just a road comic who'd done some game shows, and Hollywood can seem a little frivolous. Doing a show like Strip Poker and Cram, you're just kind of like, woohoo! It's kind of frivolous. But you see how important, the way the military folks would thank you when you came to their bases, especially like the really small fire bases. You really see like the value of comedy and the value of podcasting. And it's more than just like making people laugh or making money or, just whatever, entertaining. You see the value of it. And I think COVID has shown the value, because this has been a stressful 2 years for everybody in one form or another. And, that's why I'm so encouraging of funny, talented people like yourself. I'm like, you got to do it, because like, there's a voice that needs to be heard, and it's good. We need more comedy.
Yes, we do, and we'll bring it more on the Hawaii Comedy with James Monty podcast. Boom! Look at that. I should be doing news. I got all these segues, just like smash, Hulk smash, and smashing every week will be 2 episodes of the Hawaii Comedy James Monty podcast. I just got to work on the voice. I hate my voice.
Why you say that, James? Why you say I hate my voice? Like, come on.
Well, I don't hate my voice. I just wish I had a different voice. How about that?
Why?
Because James Earl Jones has ruined me for all voices. My son works. Like, This is CNN. Like if I had that voice, I'd be like, I'll walk around with confidence, like, Hawaii comedy with James Money.
You're 6'7". You've got to. There should be enough confidence in that you should be able to walk around. You don't need to be like Luke. I am your father. You should be able to just walk.
I want to sound like I'm 6'7". I sound like I'm not 6'7". I sound like, even if I sound like fat, I'll, hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's the Hawaii Comedy Podcast with James Money. Hey.
You should do this in your act, dude. You should say my voice doesn't sound 6'7". And do this. You should go to put this in your act.
I used to a long time ago. I say, because you talk about your insecurities, and that was one. I guess I got to. Where it's like, I wish I had the strip club voice, where, coming up next, ladies and gentlemen, like every time that guy talks, everybody's excited. Ooh, somebody naked's coming up. But not me. I'm like, my voice is like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, next at 11 o'clock hour, we're going to have Bible study. And
you sound like some NPR, NPR DJ.
Not even, because they sound like nice and they sound smooth. Like I wish I had like that smooth jazz. Or like the lady on Warriors. Hey, boppers.
Yeah. It's smooth jazz with Jimbo Maine.
Boom. All right, ladies. It's time to zip it up, and it got weird. I almost said something like
it really got weird. Your daughter's watching this.
That's why I stopped myself. I was like, whoa, Jimbo Maine, take it easy, take it easy, Jimbo Maine. But I was using that time to set up the outro music, which I realized in the beginning I did not do, which is why everybody's saying, oh, what happened? It's blank. So I didn't click on the music that I was supposed to do. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you to Graham Elwood for doing a 2-hour marathon podcast with myself. It seems like every time I have Graham Elwood, it's a great time. I've done a show where I've had 12 comics open for him. I think it was that Wounded Warrior show. Right? He was like, wow, it's like 2 hours later, I'm going to start my comedy. So, you guys can check him out at grahamelwood.com. Follow him on social media. Just search up Graham Elwood or at Graham Elwood. And that way you can boost our TikTok, our Instagram. Those of you in Hawaii, come out to the live shows. We're performing in Waikiki. We're performing in a lot of places. There's comedyuhi.com. You go there, find out where we're performing, because they have the posters for all the shows that's happening on Oahu. Thank you, Graham. I really appreciate you stopping by. Again, you're one of my mentors, and I really appreciate you, brother.
Oh, dude, I appreciate it. Thank you, man. It's been really awesome. You've always very much welcomed me here on Hawaii, even before I moved here, and so it's really awesome. So my pleasure.
Coolio. All right, let me take a few seconds. Thank you guys for watching and listening on Spotify and Anchor.fm, which I guess I'll have to do the what do you call that? The thing to make money from it eventually. So let me click on these few things I'm sharing there. Look at that, and then remove.